Hello to everyone who's here. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your support. We would love for you to put messages in chat because we turn those into speech balloons on the video, and it's fun to watch the conversation unfold as a kind of running commentary.
A purely Ben Ainsley based request, and points to Magistrate Annie for already ticking this box. Any animals that you choose to display during the video, I personally will really enjoy. That's all.
Hmm, hmm,
Same. Yes.
very
Kitty.
much.
Oh, yo, good job for you.
Hello and welcome to this very special end of year, words of the year, patron filled episode of Because Language, a show about linguistics, the science of language. My name's Daniel Midgley, and let's meet the team. First up, he's a teaching person who's in touch with the youth. It's Ben Ainsley.
Really factually inaccurate. Almost deceptively so, Daniel. The more I teach, the more I realize I have very few conceptual hand and footholds on young people culture. There's so much. Gen Z humor breaks my brain in ways that are not fun or comfortable.
I am so sorry to hear that, but would you say that you have heard your students use the kinds of words that we might be talking about in today's episode?
Look, all I can say to you is if it's been appropriated from the Black community, the privileged white students that I teach almost certainly are using those words, yes.
Okay, very good. And that is the pattern. White girls copying gay men copying Black girls.
A very weird Ouroboros, isn't it?
I saw that on a t-shirt once. Also, we do not have a linguist, Hedvig Hurgard, because she is very tired and she is in a bad time zone for this episode.
It is an appropriate 3 a.m. is an appropriate time to be very tired, to be fair.
Indeed, indeed. But we do have a very special guest. She's the founder of the Quick and Dirty Tips Network. She's an inductee in the Podcasting Hall of Fame and is known across the globe, around the globe, across the globe, as Grammar Girl. It's Mignon Fogarty. Hey, Mignon.
Hello, hello. Happy to be here.
Great to see you. Tell us what you've been doing lately.
Oh man, I'm doing my show. I've actually been doing 2 episodes a week for a lot of this year. Yeah, we added interviews. So I'm doing the regular scripted show on Tuesdays and then interviews almost every Thursday, which has been new and fun, and I love talking to people.
So what's got you going lately? Can you tell us some of your guests? Can you drop the names?
Oh man. Let's see, I always blank out when put on the spot. So great recent guest, Natalie Schilling, a forensic linguist, talked
Oh.
about like cases she's worked on. So like true crime linguistics, that's been super fun.
Mm.
And well, not fun because people were murdered or disappearing, but like hearing about it is fun. Solving the puzzles.
I always find true crime just a weird genre because it's like,
Yeah.
here's my murdered body, and it's like, well, we've got a really weird cold old case here. Let's go to our sponsor.
I know. I know I was saying it's so cool, and then I'm like, it's not cool. People died. But interesting. And
But interesting.
I interesting. I had Jennifer Lynn Barnes, who's a mega best-selling author of the Inheritance Game series. And it turns out she is a psychology professor who studied the psychology of fiction and then used everything she learned to write these novels that just took off like mad. And so she talked about like everything she knows about what makes us tick in the way that makes us love certain types of fiction and what makes fandoms, work. And it was absolutely fascinating.
I've often thought about
Um,
that in the context of bands. Like there are bands that I like. Like I have a lot of Gomez albums, but I'm not a Gomez fan. And then there are bands that I'm like, this is me. So what makes someone make that jump? It's so interesting.
It's super interesting. Yeah, there were elements like if there's, I'm trying to remember, it's been a while. If there are like things you can wear, like if there's a badge or a piece of jewelry or something that people can start to wear that's in the story that then the fans can wear, that can create a sense of connection, for example. Actually, just if you can have like a great party based on the book, with costumes or food or something like that, it
Hmm.
helps like nurture the fandom, like things like that. It was super interesting. I had Anne Lamott on. She talked about her new book, which is about quotes about love, but yeah, she's great, really fun, interesting.
That
I'll
sounds
tell you a
fantastic.
little. I'll tell you a little behind the scenes thing. When I had her on, we were doing the talk, before the interview started, and her son like set it up. I think her son listens to my podcast, and he was like, "Oh, you should really go on this podcast." And she sits down and she said, "Does anyone listen to this podcast?" I'm
Yikes.
like, "Yes."
Some people do.
I think that's a valid question that we have to keep asking ourselves.
I was like, "Okay, she doesn't like mince words." And that's what makes her well known.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here with us. For this show, we are counting down everyone's words of the year, dictionary makers, word lovers, but also from Mignon and some of our listeners. We're also going to be counting down our words of the week of the year because some time ago I shoveled all of our words of the week onto our socials and let people vote. We're going to be counting them down. You might be listening to this episode on audio in the usual podcast places, but this episode is also on YouTube. So if you want to see us and more importantly, see the chat messages that are scrolling by over here, which is really fun. For example, there's now a vigorous discussion going on about bands that we fan, that we stan. We don't just fan them, we stan them. So that's going on. So you can check that out on our YouTube channel. Ben, I have a question. Words of the year. Have you changed your feeling about our words of the week? You used to be very, very much against words of the week, and now I think that you've kind of come around.
Uh, do you know in okay, full disclosure, okay?
I know.
Everyone's gonna see how the sausage gets made here. In
I
fact,
know what you're gonna say.
this is hot off the press. Not even Daniel actually knows this, I think. I think
guessed.
he might have known. I don't look forward to this show.
What?
And by that I mean, like I want to be clear. I love everyone here. Doing this show is just the coolest, funnest thing. I've been doing it for like 12 years now. I adore it. I adore this show. This particular episode, every year, I've always got this real what's the word I'm looking for? Like almost resentment or defensiveness towards. Now, having said that, I've done a whole bunch of work on myself. I've been to therapy about this particular issue in me. So I want everyone to know that I am approaching it with an open heart, but I am acknowledging my feelings. I haven't fully excavated. I was joking about therapy. I haven't fully excavated why I feel the way I feel about this particular episode. Because you're right, Daniel, I have mellowed on words of the week. I used to performatively sort of amp it up. And
I know.
these days I really do enjoy chatting about it and finding new words and interesting words. But there is a genuine sort of resistance for this episode, and I don't know why. And now that I'm here, I'm having a great time. It's
okay.
It's bizarre. It's bizarre.
No, I think a few people feel that way about words of the year. It's like, why do people do this? Like a lot of people have fun with it, but a lot of people are like, what is this? And why is the word of the year 3 words or something? And
why are you making a fuss? It's just words.
Mignon, have you noticed this? How do people feel? What's the vibe that you're getting?
Yeah, no, I always hear that if it's more than one word, if it's a phrase, you always hear like, well, that's not a word. Yeah. But yeah, I think people like it. They like to look back and think about the year, and often it's someone will say a word that you haven't thought of, and you'll be like, "Oh, yes, I had forgotten about that," but yes, it was everywhere, or something like that. I think most people enjoy it.
Yeah.
Just not Ben.
No, I do. It's one of those things. Like once it's begun, it's okay. It's great. Look. Like I said, I need to do some more work on myself, clearly.
I get you though. I get you though. It's like Collins goes off first always. And then it's like, oh God, it's like Christmas in September. Are we starting already? Oh my gosh.
That's true. It does feel like, you go to the hardware store and suddenly there's trees in September because they
Hmm.
start early.
Totes. Well, our audience for this episode is dominated by patrons. We've got loads and loads of patrons jammed into this Zoom room. They've given us their support, attention, and ideas for the whole of the year. We want to thank you for your support by having you join us for this episode, but also by sending you our annual mail out. That's for paid patrons at any level. It's almost done. The packages have been arriving at my house, and they're almost all here.
So many packages. What
So
a
many
great
packages.
time of the year to be doing mailing as well, Daniel. I bet you're very popular down at the post office.
I feel very Santa Clausy. I really do. I mean, I've got the linguistic chaos goblin stickers from Trudy and Doug of Oglaf. We've got the Grammar Hills magnet. We've got the Holostar logo sticker, and we're just waiting on the postcards. But once they get here, I'm shipping them out. So patrons, please make sure that Patreon has your correct mailing address. And if you're listening to this and you're not a patron, come join us. That's patreon.com/becauselangpod. And thank you to all of our great patrons. All right, ready to start?
It's time.
Let's just I'm gonna just start naming them off, and we're gonna give our thoughts. We're gonna do some free associating. We're gonna be
It's like Seinfeld. I'm gonna name names.
we're gonna be pulling from chat. So get those messages in there. First one, it's always Collins. Collins is always first. And their word was brat. Brat.
Brat.
Brat.
Right.
I define this as having a confident, independent, and hedonistic attitude, as described by pop star Charlie XCX, that girl who is a little messy and likes to party and maybe says some dumb things sometimes. We also saw Brat Summer.
Question.
Yes.
Do we think that this is being pulled from kink community?
Okay, tell me about the kink usage, because I was going to go there too.
So it's always so I find like I would like to conceive of myself as a very sex positive individual, but I still feel compelled when I'm talking about something like this to be like, full disclosure, everyone, I myself am not a brat, but like it shouldn't matter at all. But there's that weird, like, I'm almost like ashamed on some tiny stupid level to know this. So I'm gonna try and dispose of that within kink circles. And the reason I want to say this isn't something that I'm a full bottle on is because I don't want people to walk away from this explanation being like, well, I heard on this podcast. So go do your own research. But a brat is within kink communities, you can classify people's proclivities in various ways. And a brat is like a subgenre of a particular type of kink, which is broadly sort of falls under sub. A person who likes to not have like sort of quote the power in some sort of play sex type session. A brat as a subgenre of that or a sub categorization of a sub is a person who can be quite cheeky, quite naughty. So not what you would necessarily typically or like stereotypically think of as a submissive type of person. So
You are
they
really
can
overwording this. What is going on?
I
Okay,
don't
so
know. Well, I want people to have like so a brat is a type of sub who is like naughty essentially.
yeah, it's so you can engage in bratting. This is a special tactic that your person can use when they're trying to annoy you for attention. It's like, play with me. No, I don't want to play with you. I'm doing my work. You can't do your work if it's all over the room. Woo! Well, now you're in for it, and then you're getting a spankaroo, right? So that's you're provoking your top. Have I described the situation? I have.
Oh
I
my God.
That's the best I
Spankaroo's
can
great.
do.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
that
Yeah.
was awesome.
Okay, great. Well, no, I am unaware to the extent to which this overlaps with the practice of bratting, which is super fun. But it does seem to have overlapped politically because Charlie XCX, good album by the way, Brat, tweeted Kamala is brat and therefore sort of intersected with the moment at the time. Honestly, feels like Collins went a little early.
It felt like it was sort of a flash in the pan to me. Like I haven't heard anyone use it in the last couple of months, probably.
That's so brat.
I did. I did listen to a bunch of music to prepare for this episode. I'm learning so much. I'm so much more culturally literate than I even was 5 minutes ago.
Favorite track?
But the hit Von Dutch was
Von Dutch
very
is
good.
amazing. I've
Yes.
said this before. The algorithm suggested it to me and young ones in the car, and we've vibed hard with it.
No, I also looked up how she got her name, Charlie XCX. So it turns out
Oh,
I'm like, what is that? Is it like some Roman numeral or something? No, it means kiss Charlie kiss.
oh, there you go. That's lovely.
It was apparently her MSN Messenger handle when she was a teen.
Oh,
Charming.
wow. I didn't realize Charlie XCX was as close to my age as that necessarily makes her.
Yep, she is. I noticed James in chat who says, since I'm from the Midwest, I still sometimes read brat as brat, which is short for bratwurst.
Get me the brat.
You can eat hot brats.
Mm.
Okay, but you know what? I'll pass. Let's go on. The Australian National Dictionary Center. So this one's going to have an Aussie flavor. Colesworth. Ben, tell me about Colesworth.
I have not encountered this word in the wild,
Okay.
for lack of a better phrase, but the Australian in me is able to backwards engineer what's going on here. In Australia, our supermarket market is severely dominated by two very large players. One is called Coles and one is called Woolworths. No, I believe, overt relation to other names like that in other markets globally. And that duopoly has sort of wreaked havoc, for lack of a better phrase, on like prices and that sort of thing. So I'm assuming this is a portmanteau of the two words to sort of signify Frankenstein's monster in this market, sort of thing.
Yep, you got it.
Okay.
We do have this Australian problem. We're a large country, but we don't have that many people, and we import a lot of things. So there's very few suppliers. There was an investigation this year of price gouging on the show Four Corners, which is kind of like 60 Minutes, 64 corner minutes, in which they interviewed the CEO of Woolworths, and he walked out of the interview and subsequently resigned. So you know the interview went really badly when that happens.
How did the
Resigned.
interview go? I'm not employed there anymore.
I'm out of here. So, yes, it's a portmanteau of Coles and Woolworths with the implication that they're both the same. By the way, do any Americans feel like it's funny that Woolworths is an Australian brand?
Yeah, it's like my grandmother's company, where my grandma shopped.
So it's almost like a Macy's or something like that, like an old school, like it's been around for a long, long time.
Did they do they even exist in the US anymore?
James asks. I think not. I think it ceased existing in the 90s. At least that's what the Wikipedia page says, which also says the name Woolworths in Australia was legally taken to capitalize on the F.W. Woolworth name since they did not do business in Australia and had not registered the trademark there. So it's basically
so it's just an absolute shameless brand grab.
Yes.
Okay, so redact what I said before, folks. Absolutely is related to, just not in a very like noble or ethical way.
Yep. Next one, Cambridge with manifest. Has anyone been manifesting anything? Anybody have any feels on this?
I have not been. Well, I mean, look, it's astrology adjacent, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, which
It is.
which is about as critical as I'm going to get, and I will now sort of step back from the microphone.
Oh, I'll get critical
Okay,
in your
good.
stead.
Yeah, good,
No,
good.
celebrities like singer Dua Lipa, gymnast Simone Biles have talked about manifesting. That is, putting your goals out there, making a big wish, and sending your goal to the universe so that the universe, which essentially functions like a wish granting machine, will make it happen.
It's not like they worked their butts off or anything.
Yeah.
I think that there could be some really positive things about like looking at your goal every day and saying, you know what? I want that thing. I'm going to work on that thing. I'm going to mentally sort of direct myself toward doing that thing, in which case it is you doing that thing.
Yeah, you've described self-discipline. That's what that is.
You know what? Can I just share a personal story though? Like,
Yes.
it's a very compelling illusion because How many wishes do we throw out into the universe every day? And I was standing there on a street with my sons at a park, and I was thinking, dang, this street, it is so nice. And I am depressed because as a linguist with no prospects, I will never probably be able to live on a street like this. And I now live on that street. Okay. The universe has coincidentally worked it out. And if I were a believer in The Secret or in manifesting, I could say, oh, I did something to put a wish out there in the universe, which then came true. And I could make that my origin story or something. But there are many wishes that we make, many things happen to us, and some of them are just going to line up.
Yeah, I saw multiple people in the chat saying it made them think of The Secret, and it did me too. Immediately, I'm like, that's old. Like, oh, I guess the kids are discovering this thing, rediscovering it. Kids
That's
today.
But
I
that's
did
20 years ago now, or
at
thereabouts.
least
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
no more.
Okay.
It would be more. Yeah, and so, but I also listened to Dua Lipa in preparation for this episode.
You've really done your research. I like this.
I've got to say that the Secret sort of repackaged these ideas, but you can go even farther back to an old, just a really ancient document called the Master Key, which is basically the same kinds of ideas. And it's as faith erodes, traditional religious faith, we sort of pick up the things that made it work, like confirmation bias, and we sort of bring them into the world now. The nasty side is that it could be a form of victim blaming. When something bad happens to someone, what happened? Did they fail to manifest sufficiently? Did they maybe wish something bad onto themselves? So this is a dangerous sort of idea.
I think the other sort of pernicious aspect to like a genuine, heartfelt, enthusiastic belief in manifestation is that it sort of gives a free pass on systems issues, right? Like if your worldview is that if I just need to like really want something and think about and focus on it, and then it'll happen, that sort of allows you to not go, oh, hang on, wait, no, I'm not getting like the job that I really need or the apartment I really need or whatever, because the system is fucked and it needs to change. So that's also a thing that I'm just a little bit like about.
The just world fallacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was an interesting little insight from Cambridge about how they choose their word, because they mentioned that resilience was actually more frequently looked up, but they didn't think it was as linguistically interesting as manifest. So they chose manifest instead.
I do think that manifest is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I long for resilience as well. Tricky. Well, the next one came from Macquarie Dictionary in Australia. It was enshittification.
A little bit late to the game, Macquarie.
It's nice that this was Macquarie's word of the year, because it's a great reminder of last year when it was our word of the year.
Macquarie. That's how Macquarie is that. Just watching us and being like, no, I'll just copy their work.
Well, we know the people from Macquarie. We know who's on the board. So we're just
being silly,
giving them a little dig there. Unfortunately, enshittification has only gotten shittier.
Yeah. Only yet more appropriate.
I'm afraid so. So let's move on from enshittification and move on to demure. From dictionary.com, that was their word. Restrained in appearance and demeanor, part of a catchphrase used by lifestyle and beauty influencer Jules LeBron. Very demure, very mindful. Anybody got any feels on this one?
Yeah, I felt it was also like just a flash. You know, it's funny. It went completely viral. I made a very demure, very mindful joke about a week after it happened, and I felt like I am so late. You know,
just landed like a lead balloon.
Word of the year. But it was a lot of other dictionaries. It was in the runners-up lists too.
A lot.
Yeah, one of them said I guess they said it felt like, because when she was talking about very demure, very mindful, she was talking about her hair and makeup and how you should look when you go to work. And so they thought maybe it tied into the return to office push that's been happening in the world.
We're trying to link it to something desperately so that we can make a piece out of it, right? This is so that it's not the new chuggy. No, this must not be allowed to fade.
See, this is
I agree.
the
Return
thing,
to
right?
office. Boo.
Yeah. Like I feel like Chuyi, this is one of those words that like I feel like that almost needs these various lexicographers and that sort of thing need like a little almost like a logic gate of like was the half-life of this word less than like a week? And if the answer is yes, it just shouldn't go on any lists. It's just it's like a shooting star, right? Like it was just like there and it was gone. And so, yeah, I don't know. I that when they said it just seems so memey, but like in the not good way, like in the like just there and gone.
Hmm. I look at our words of the week from January and February, and I'm like, oh, I can scarcely even remember these.
Yeah.
And that's the nature of words. They are bubbles. These are these phrases that we say. I heard somebody being critical of Gen Xers who say all the things. I'm going to clean all the things. Please stop. They said saying all the things. You just sound old. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm another part of me that's no longer relevant. James says
Just
your
beats falling off.
James in chat says your point is on fleek. Thank you, James. Can't do better than that. The Economist's word of the year, kakistocracy. That was one of our words of the week just a little while ago. It's the rule of the poopy. That's right. Greek kakistos, the worst, which ultimately comes from Proto-Indo-European kaka, which means poop. It's the rule of the people who are the poopiest. I feel like this is a very economist word of the year because they would.
Yes, 100%. You've taken the word of the year from an economics periodical. Like it's yeah.
Can you imagine them sitting about which ones to do? Oh, it's one of those $10 words, right? Oh, let's do that one. They're so farty and turgid in an establishment way.
Now, one of the things that I think is interesting here is do we think that this is just the economist's version of demure, right? So, for instance, the word I think of when I see this word is kleptocracy, which has had really good legs, right? That is a word that we came up with to talk about sort of like systems of governance where the classic example being if you get pulled over by the police, you can give them a bit of money and then you'll be like sort of on your way sort of thing where people in positions of power will steal things to get by. That has endured like a lot. I can't see this enduring in that way. Like this seems like a nice, fun, funny word,
Yeah.
but not necessarily like a long. Whoa, one would hope there's not a good reason for this word to stay around for a long time.
It's entertaining. It certainly is. And that's kind of what we're doing. Speaking of entertaining, let's go with the one from Oxford University Press, not the Oxford English Dictionary, but Oxford University Press. They had a really good pick as far as like economy of choice goes because they chose brain rot, which is a loose collection of slang used by Generation Alphas. Well, let's get started. What's collectively inside the brain rot basket? Mignon, what do you think of?
Well, Skibbity, Ohio. Yeah, that's what I think of. But you know what I love about brain rot is that it came from Walden. Like so, Thoreau. I actually pulled this quote because Thoreau used it in Walden. He said, "While England endeavors to cure the potato rot, will not any endeavor to cure the brain rot?"
Mm-hmm.
Thoreau.
Convergent evolution or plucked, do we think?
It's just the kind of thing that people worry about, isn't it? I mean, there was a hyperventilating thing in The Guardian saying, oh, brain rot is a great term, but also the internet really is rotting our brains. And here's evidence. And they managed to tie it back to something. Let's talk about Ohio. What's up? What's up with Ohio?
Like nonsense words. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
There's some meme, I don't know. There's some meme where there's like a head in a toilet. I don't know if that's related to Ohio, but it's all memes all the way down.
Okay, we'll go with the Skibbity Toilet. It's the video series on TikTok by Alexei Gerasimov, about a head in a toilet singing or saying Skibbity Bop Bop. I haven't even watched it, so I don't even know.
James says Ohio equals boring or mid.
Or Ohio. I'm here for the Midwest. I am there. Ohio is very beautiful, and there's lots to recommend Ohio. I feel bad for Ohioans. Ohioans.
They are Ohioans.
Okay.
um, I've read it as something embarrassing or weird. People have been posting these only in Ohio memes. which are these bizarre incidents in the state, very similar to Florida Man doing things. Florida Man's still out there. Also very similar to Texas, which is what they say in Norway when something is weird.
Oh, I didn't
It's
know
very
that.
Texas.
It's
Yeah.
so Texas.
That's so Texan. I love it.
No, it's Texas.
Oh, okay.
That's so
right.
Texas. So now Ohio joins the weird club along with Florida and Texas. Congratulations, Ohio. There's also Riz. We talked about Riz extensively. That was huge last year. There's also Phantom Tax. I'm so Riz, I might have Phantom Tax.
I don't know what that is.
Phantom tax.
Take a
Like
guess.
Phantom as in phantom?
No,
Like-
it's Fanum.
Oh no, I'm out.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
I'm just going to read this from Urban Dictionary.
Uh-oh.
Phantom Tax comes from the comedy creator Phantom, who is a member of streamer Kai Cenat's influencer crew, AMP. Let's just meditate on that for a second. You can be part of an influencer crew in 2024. That is a thing. I'll continue. The phrase refers to the way Phantom would jokingly tax other members of AMP in 2022 by taking bits of their food when they were eating, according to Know Your Meme.
Okay, so it's just sibling behavior essentially.
What? Haven't you ever grabbed some food and said, Dad tax?
I have not. No, because I am not a terrible person. Also, I really, 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 really hate sharing my food, so I don't want to make it seem like people can take food from my plate.
Okay, fair enough. Grabbing food from others, probably not great behavior. Well, those terms are skippity, for example, it could be something really good, something really bad. It's all in context. And I was talking about this with my hairstylist, and she said, this makes no sense. None of this makes any sense. And I said, that's why they like it. Well, you've got to talk about something, haven't you? What
It
are you doing?
bamboozles the old folk.
It sure does. Okay. If there's no more comment on that, yeah, Lord Mortis says Dadaist humor is in, and I am kind of encouraged that there's a kind of absurdism going on with the young folk. I think it's great. Let's bring back Dada. Dax says Daniel Daniel has a hairstyle.
I know. I'm
Yes,
going to be
I
honest.
do.
I was a little bit that seemed like the lead there, Daniel.
Was the hairstylist sort of too much of a word? Should I have gone for barber?
Look, man, you do you.
We all live with a measure of self-deception. Merriam-Webster's word of the year, polarization.
Ooh, now this is getting closer to like there's some meat on the bone here, I reckon.
I like that it's related to the poles of the globe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And
They're
one
so far
imagines
apart.
probably by that logic magnetism as well, right? Like attracting and repelling and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, there's a lot. That's pretty juicy. Yeah.
I think but I also just think given the moment, for lack of a better phrase, not just in America, but in many, many places around the world. This is a very, this one feels like it has a substance that a lot of the other words kind of haven't had. It's a lot less memey and it's a lot more like this describes a pretty significant aspect of our social reality now. So for that reason, that's why I'm kind of like, ooh.
I feel that. We used to get information from a lot of places, but largely the same outlets. There were places you could go, but there were only a certain number of places. And they had an interest in being reliable and fact-checking themselves and each other so that we could have trust in them. And then the internet created a way for anybody to have an outlet, which is good. That's, the democratization of information. But then anonymous troll 1488 had a way to get his views out there. So now we had a choice. We could continue to listen to traditional media gatekeepers who were having economic problems of their own as attention and money moved away from them, or we could just, jump into a chum bucket of views from everybody and hope that we could sort out the information from the disinformation with no training. So our sources of information are now potentially so diverse that we can't even agree on a narrative of reality from which we can move forward. And so now we've got, I think, a lot of traditionalists, or what's the axis here? I guess there's the conspiratorial side, there's the everyone is lying to you side. And then there's the sort of establishments have had their failings, but gatekeepers are professionals, experts are a good thing. Is it expertise versus conspiratorial? Is that the axis?
I think there's one that's one spectrum across which people can fall, but I think you like those terrible old personality tests that are not evidence based. You can actually probably ratchet someone across a few of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So another one that I tend to think of would be engaged versus not engaged. I don't know if this is true elsewhere in the world, but here in Australia, there is a real, shall we say, problem. Yeah, I'm just going to use the word problem. There is a real habit amongst many middle class Australians to just very openly be like, well, I don't much go in for that politics stuff, right? Like when you talk about issues that are happening or stuff that's going on, or like God forbid I mention Gaza, like in a social setting. There's a lot of Australians would prefer to just have things be chill and non-conflicty and confrontational conversationally than actually. And so, but then because of that, they will sort of go out of their way to really quite deliberately not expose themselves to much information that's out there, not because they delight in being ignorant necessarily, but because being politically aware is work and it's hard. And, some people don't want to do that work. They would rather put their efforts in elsewhere. That's the most generous I can be about that. So that's another spectrum that I see a lot, which is people who are just like, oh, I can't be, who can be bothered, right?
Aria Flame says some of us are burnt out on it. I would argue some people have convinced themselves that attempting to be politically neutral is a politically neutral stand, and it's not. It's not.
Being not engaged is also, I think, a definitive sign of privilege.
Yes.
Only
Mm.
the privileged get to be not engaged. Which I'm not criticizing anyone. Like people have to look out for themselves, and there's probably a bunch of people in this chat room right now who are sitting there being like, yeah, but I'm really tired, and I get that, right? Like capitalism is a motherfucker, and it really does a great job at making sure we're exhausted as much as possible, so that things like this are just a bit too hard for us. Um, but if we as a society aren't willing to like lean forward a bit, and because that's the thing about the old system of news, and I've said this before on the show, this is like Ben Ainsley's little hokey thing that he says to his students. Journalism used to be eating your vegetables. It wasn't fun, it wasn't exciting, it wasn't entertaining. It was the boring thing that you did because you understood that it was an important part of what needed to happen in life and in society and that sort of thing. And then Fox News, amongst others, right? Certainly not them alone, were like, oh, what if it could be like hamburgers? And that's just sort of what's happened to news over the last 30 years. And it's tough, it's hard, right? Like it doesn't get to be fun. Being educated about what's going on in the world is work and it is labor, and some of us, a lot of us, have to do it, but we're not. And yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, for the word polarization, I tend to agree with LK in the chat that it's really like both sides bullshit. It's a word you're likely to hear on the evening news or in the big newspapers, but it implies that all things are equal, and the two sides, the poles, and there really are just a lot of people out there telling lies. So
Yeah.
to say we're polarized is maybe not an accurate picture of what's happening.
So there was a poll a survey where they got people to answer factual questions about political stuff, and they asked them where they got their news from. And the group that did the worst was the Fox News viewers. They answered the questions the least accurately, worse than people who said they consumed no news at all. What that means is
That's
going
terrifying.
outside and banging
Yeah.
your head on a rock in the garden is a better source of news than right-wing media, who admits to lying to and deceiving their audience, as opposed to the network of journalists and people who do get it wrong, deserve criticism sometimes, but who have ways of checking each other out and who have an interest in being reliable. Okay, whew. Let's go on to we're just to wrap it up. Our listeners have given us words in languages other than English. The German youth word is Aura, which now has acquired a new sense of having riz, being cool, doing good things.
That's certainly not relegated to German youth, I can tell you that much.
No, it's going around the English-speaking world. Ben, you mentioned this on a couple of episodes ago.
Yeah, this is the new it thing. Though I would be interested to see if this has staying power or if this is just going to be another flash in the pan thing, as so much of teen lexical sort of proclivities tend to be. It's like I always wonder what makes something the Backstreet Boys, right? Teenagers now listen to the Backstreet Boys. They can sing like word for word the entire thing of like, I want it that way. What makes something be that and not be, I don't know, like bumfunk MCs, which was huge when I was a kid alongside the Backstreet Boys, but no one young knows freestyler, right? But yeah, like what how do you be Backstreet Boys linguistically and not find yourself being iconic Finnish funk electro duo bumfunk MCs?
I've asked myself that question over
every day
and over again. Mignon and James have also pointed out that aura points are a way to quantify your aura, which I like quite a lot. Brazil's word, and please jump in, everyone. Brazil's word, anxiety, ansiedade. And I'm saying that completely wrong. But Brazil, are you okay? That's how a person pronounces that word if they've known several Brazilians.
I don't remember the numbers, but anxiety beat like the second word in the survey by like 1 or 2 percentage points. It like was barely, they had like 5 words they all voted on, and it was like 21%, 19%. Yeah, like they were very close. I don't remember what the other words were though.
Right. Okay.
Wouldn't it be funny if they were all just synonyms for anxiety?
One of our words was anxiety. The next one was apprehension. Number 3, dread.
Yeah.
Dread coming in at 3. Let's go on to Hawaiian, makia, which means something like aim, motto, or purpose. It serves as a powerful reminder to move forward with intention and clarity. I like it. Makia.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice.
It's a good way to live.
Yeah. What's your makia?
I wonder how it's used. And then Japan, futehodo, which is the name of a television show that got very popular. And in this show, a phys ed teacher steps into a time vortex and moves from 1986 to 2024. I like the concept.
Oh, that could be really interesting, right? Like I could see that as a fascinating vehicle for that to sort of interrogate some of Japan's cultural, like what things have moved on from the 80s, what things haven't moved on. Like it could be a very interesting social commentary as a setup.
You know what? I do like the Trudy and Doug the Olaf cartoon about when Sleeping Beauty awakes and she's like this horrible regressive person, and a fairy comes and says, "Well, she is 100 years old."
Well, it translates as something like totally inappropriate, right?
Oh,
but then,
okay.
But then the description said that it's not about like just showing how he's like bad and wrong all the time. It's sort of about understanding our differences. It sounded kind of lovely.
Nice. Well, those were the words from everybody. We're going to tackle our words, but first, I think it's time to play the greatest game in the world, and that is Related or Not. So our theme music this time comes from Adam, who generated it using Suno AI. You ready?
Related or not? Is it connected to the word? Related or not? Is it connected to the word or the other word? Related or not?
Thank you. That
Wow.
was enjoyable.
I've not heard a lot of AI generated audio yet, but it was so astounding how much like a chat GPT script that sort of sounded like it was that sort of generically pleasant. It sounds like it could have been taken from one of those like mid-range 3D animated kids movies on Netflix kind of thing.
Mhm.
But populated with your words, Ben. Those were your lyrics.
I know.
Well,
Oh dear.
it's time for Related or Not, where we figure out whether two or more words share a common ancestor etymologically, or if the similarity between them is merely coincidental. This one comes from a story where I talked about a clerical error with my daughter. And she said, "What's a clerical error?" And I said, "Oh, it's a mistake on paper, such as a clerk might make." And I thought, cleric and clerk. Now, before you vote, we're going to talk through some of ours. We're even going to let you sort of advocate for or against some of the answers here, related or not. I'm going to go. Ben, do you want to go first? No, wait, we should have Mignon go first. We'll
Yeah, I
push
think
her
so.
into the ice.
Okay. Okay, I was truthfully, I have no idea. But it seems to me that they should be related because clerics and clerks, they're kind of the same thing, and a clerk would make a clerical error. But then I feel like it's too easy. Like that it's got to be a
Mm,
trick.
you're hitting the red
So
herring thing. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So
No,
I'm
I will just
I
remind
don't
you that
know.
this is not from one of our listeners trying to muck us up. This arose naturally from a conversation that I had with my daughter and not from noticing it on a web page or something like
This
that.
But
this is
then
this is
maybe
a
you
farm
looked
to
it up and
table.
but then maybe you looked it up and you said this is very surprising and I'll make a quiz out of it. Otherwise, why would you remember?
Would it change your mind if I said I proposed to use it for this show before I looked the answer up?
Okay, yeah, probably.
And I guessed the answer myself. I said this has got to be totally related. The cler it's probably just cler plus ick, and then it got changed to clerk.
That's where I was heading as well. Like the red herring o-meter is firing off on this one, but I
Mhm.
think the relatedness is just a bit too related-y. I'm gonna go with yes, it is related.
Related. All right.
Yeah.
Now it's time for you to vote. I can see the votes, but nobody else can. Except I think Ben, you can. Wait, I haven't made you a host yet. Okay.
No, I
Okay.
don't want to know. Don't ruin the
Have you
magic.
have you voted? Did you
I
did you
have.
click related? Okay.
I
Okay.
did, yeah. No,
Okay.
I said related and then I clicked not related because I'm a contrarian, Daniel.
That can you change that now?
Nope, it's there.
It's,
It's in
so
forever.
one of those is you. All right. I am going to end the poll. There are more people who haven't voted yet. I'll give it 3, 2, 1. Okay. And now I'm going to share the results. So it looks like 15 of us said related, 4 of us said not related. What's the correct answer? The correct answer is yeah, they're totally related.
Okay.
Cleric is from Old English cleric, and then they're both related to clericus, Church Latin clericus, a priest, which makes sense because writing and stuff was something that you could only do if you were in the priest class.
Was the holy job.
Does anybody come from a place where they say clerk versus Clark and there's confusion?
We have clerks in Australia, don't we? But
We
only
have
in
clerks.
certain things like in a hospital, the person who administers the paperwork is like a ward clerk, I believe.
Interesting. Mignon, what's your view on this? Have you heard anyone say that someone is a Clark?
Never. Never.
Okay. Okay. Now, there's an interesting thing here. You might have heard people say Clark or clerk. You might have heard Berkeley Square, which is spelled with a B-E, not B-A. And also there's sergeant, which is said sergeant, but which is spelled sergeant. What's going on there? Well, in the 1800s, a lot of words with ER were pronounced AR. People used to say that they were in the service or that a parson came up and talked to them, especially if they were working class.
There you
So
go.
how you say clerk or clerk depends on who was talking in your area, what social class they were, and then what was going on for that group pronunciation wise. Okay, let's go on to our second one. And this one
Next.
comes from Dax from Speech Docs.
Hey,
Hey,
the man who has to translate my voice, you poor, poor fool.
mannequin and mannequin. You know, a mannequin with a Q is a dummy dressed up so you can see what the clothes look like. And a mannequin is a little artist's model that you can move around. So,
Oh, I didn't know those two things were spelled differently, and now I'm broken.
Same.
welcome to the world we've all been living in. Well,
Mm.
should I start?
Well, actually, I think we should do this the other way around, Daniel. I
What?
think we should get everyone to vote, and then we should see the responses because I worry that us talking about it is influencing the thing. So let everyone just go in blind, then we'll give our reasons as to what we thought about how we voted.
I kind of like influencing the vote. I like
Oh, you
sowing
power-hungry
uncertainty.
monster.
Well, okay, people are voting. There they go. Oh, they're pouring in. Okay. We have a majority of the votes here.
Okay.
Maybe I'll
Okay.
start.
Okay.
I think that they might be unrelated.
So your red herring meter is firing off
It
real hard.
is. I'm
Yeah.
aware that Irish has a suffix in, a diminutive suffix, and we see it in names like Colleen and Maureen. We also see it in words like smithereens, which is a diminutive of Irish smiothar, a fragment. So I'm wondering if a mannequin with a K
Is
is
a
a
small
little
man.
man.
Ah.
And then the mannequin with a Q came a different way through French or something. That's my guess.
I went with related on this one because whilst my red herring emitter was firing off fully, I just couldn't get away from how identical they are.
Mhm.
It really just feels like different languages spelling of the exact same thing for the exact same thing. Like it's
Mhm. Mhm.
so I went
Yeah.
related.
That was my thinking too. I voted related there. It's like a big thing and a small thing, the same thing,
Mm.
spelled very similarly.
And you
It
pose
seems,
them both as well. That's the other thing, right? Like
yeah.
mannequins, the things that you can put clothes on can have like postures and all sorts of things. So it just seems so similar.
Okay, I'm going to share the results. 84% of us said related.
Ooh.
Only 16% said not related. Does anybody, do you want to, either of you two want to change your votes?
I don't, but I hope it's not related so those like 3 or 4 people can feel so victorious.
Yep.
The answer is they're totally related. They're both
Ah!
little man from Dutch mannequin. I'm unaware the extent to which the in is related to the Irish diminutive, but there you go. All right.
Next.
Okay, this one comes from MVP Chris. Chris says Marsh, Marshall, and Marshall. Chris says, I haven't looked up
Oh.
relatedness, but was watching a YouTube video about Rome, as you do.
Yeah.
And they talked about the Campus Martius, which had been a marsh that was sometimes used as a location to drill troops. And then I thought, wait, is camp just Latin campus? And it is. But we've got 5 different choices. Marshal, the kind that like a US Marshal or marshaling troops, and then Marshal having to do with soldiers. You got ain't none of them related. Marsh is the odd one out. Marshall's the odd one out. Martial is the odd one out, or they're all related. So people are thinking about this one. I think while people are thinking, I think we better say, Ben, you go first.
This reminds me of Pitch. You remember that one?
I remember pitch. It had all these
Right.
senses.
To pitch
throw.
a tent to the place where you would play soccer or cricket or something like that, which is a very
Yes.
obviously like English and Australian word for it. And the fact that if I recall correctly, Daniel, the field and to pitch a tent were related because you would often billet soldiers on a field. That thing got called a pitch, pitching a tent, blah, 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 blah. For that reason, I'm going with these things are all related, despite the fact that when you said this, I was like, a marsh is a terrible place to get a bunch of people together. But I'm wondering if our sort of understanding of a marsh now, and I'm also wondering if this is related to march as
Mhm.
well as a fourth associated term. I'm wondering if a marsh back in the days of Rome isn't necessarily the kind of like boggy, moorish fen type thing that we tend to think of it now, like a wetlands environment, and instead just meant kind of an open space, like a treeless space where you could get people to like do stuff. So for that reason, I'm going with all related.
Okay, Mignon, what do you got?
Yeah, I am super frustrated because I wrote about this topic back when some congressman spelled law wrong, but it was so long ago that I actually can't remember what I wrote. But I think they're different. I think Marshall, the IAL, I think it's has a different origin, but I can't remember.
So
But like I wrote about it.
you're describing my entire history
That's
on
my
this
life.
show.
That's
Don't
my
worry.
life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Are you saying ain't none of them related?
No, I'm saying a Marshall, Martial, is the odd one out, I
Okay.
think.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
I didn't write it.
Interesting.
I know I didn't write about marsh, just the word marsh. It was just
Okay.
all the variants of Marshall.
I said no to marsh, but I
The
do
the place.
the swampy place because that just feels like Old English to me. And the
Mm.
other ones seem Latin, except I wasn't sure about the Marshall with an SH. So I said marsh is the odd one out. Okay.
Can we, before we see everyone's answers, can we just do a
Yeah.
little bit of a explore on? So Marshall, Marshal,
Mhm.
is to move people or to move things, livestock, and it can also be a job that you do, right?
Mhm.
Like a law enforcement officer.
Yes.
Marshall, Martial, is to do with is also to do with like law enforcement, but like the application of quite strict, stringent, and sort of if you break the rules, very quite severe punishments will come your way type thing, right? Is that how we're operating with these words?
Yes. And I
Okay.
took a look at Marshall with an SH and I found out that yes, it is the job that you do, but it's also the getting the soldiers together.
Mm,
Those two are the same word because that's what a marshal does.
okay,
Okay,
gotcha.
I'm going to close this one off and I'm going to share the results.
Ooh, okay. We got a fairly like there's a distribution.
Okay. Most people think Marsh is the odd one out. Um, a few people think that Martial TI is the odd one out, but a lot of people are saying, you know what? They're all related. So it's nice that I picked the most common answer, at least. It was wrong.
Oh.
The real
Oh.
answer is one that nobody picked.
Oh, no way.
So which one is that?
Uh, are none of them related?
Ain't none of them related.
Wow.
Wow.
Marsh just comes from Old English Marsh, from Proto-Germanic Marisko. The Marshal with an SH is not related to marsh, but it is related to a a kind of horse.
Hmm.
What kind?
I don't know. A mare?
A mare. That's
Oh,
it.
wow.
A marshal is a horse servant. It's two words, horse and servant.
Oh.
And then to marshal the troops is just what a marshal does. Now, martial with the TI comes from medieval Latin martialis, of Mars, having to do with Mars,
Of
Mm.
war and that sort of thing.
of war, and all that
Okay.
kind of thing. So
It's wild to me that TIAL and SHAL are not related when the concepts are so close.
they are. They are. Okay, so thanks to Dax and thanks to Chris. Thanks to everybody who's provided us with words and jingles all this year. We're going to have more in the coming year, so keep them coming. If we didn't get to yours, then send it again because it's probably a lot of fun. Let's go on to our second bracket of words from the year, and I'm going to start with you, Mignon. Would you tell us what words were on your radar, and did you have a word of the year this year?
I did. My word of the year, I thought vibe should be the word of the year. The vibes are off. The vibes have changed. There's an Instagram influencer suing another woman for stealing her vibe.
That
I
is
actually
so
just
interesting.
Yeah, I just saw this morning Google Maps has a neighborhood vibe feature. You can like somehow click and it'll tell you the vibes of the neighborhood. Like I have been hearing this word constantly, and I'm shocked that nobody chose it.
I think
People have
that's
been sleeping
fair.
on it. People
That's
have
a
been sleeping on it.
fair call. Yeah.
You,
You're like the record picker who's just like, it's gonna be big. Watch
I
out.
mean, Daniel, you used it like multiple times at the beginning of this Zoom too.
I did. It was on my mind.
Yeah,
James has
you
pointed
did.
out that the Russians have picked vibe in the equivalent Cyrillic letters. It appears to be a loan word, which just means vibe. But yes, the vibes are off. It's a vibes election. It's the vibe. Australians who have watched the movie The Castle will be well aware of
Yeah.
that very quotable line. Is there a more quotable movie than The Castle? I think maybe not.
Possibly for my generation, Napoleon Dynamite. That's the only one I can come up with.
Yep. Yep. Cool. Thank you. That's a good one. Um, let's now go on to our listener, James. James, are you good to go? I'm going to pin you. I've asked James
Oh,
to
sure.
I've asked James to come and
Yes.
present some of his that we didn't get to because James has been an absolute ferret in tracking down words of the week, and so many have come from James, and he's the holder of the fire hose. So, James, what are some that we haven't gotten to that you really want to get out there?
Yeah. One is Torment Nexus,
Mm.
which I actually I feel like goes really well with enshittification, except it's like deliberate enshittification because it comes from a tweet from 2021 that was by Alex Bleckman, who said, and the tweet was, sci-fi author, in my book, I invented the Torment Nexus as a cautionary tale. Tech company, at long last, we have created the Torment Nexus from classic sci-fi novel Don't Create the Torment Nexus.
Don't create the torment
And
nexus.
and so Torment Nexus is just like this shorthand for, a dystopian concept that was never intended as a good idea to be invented, but people invent them anyway, like AI or apparently mirror life. So,
Or grok. Grok is a term that's been or babelfish. We always do this with technology. We create these things. And it does really feel like tech bros or broligarchs really are driving the bus and we're all helplessly inside of it. I think that's probably one of the vibes of our age.
For
I
sure.
What
like
else?
that.
I think
Torment
that's
Nexus
very
is a
true.
fun one.
Yep. What else?
Brunch Lord, which is, I just find a hilarious insult that I saw in context once. And Nancy Friedman did a really great Word of the Week post tracing the history of it. It was kind of invented by this guy named Carl Bode on Blue Sky in 2023, and it's an insult for someone in upper management. And as Carl described it, it's my definition of a brunch lord is not just somebody who likes brunch, which is most of us. It's somebody that brunches a lot and has also failed upward into positions of unearned importance and routinely does nothing of actual value. So brunch lords will ruin your day in the corporate environment.
There we
So
go.
a fail son who also likes brunch.
Corporate fail son.
I read Nancy's newsletter too, for the Nancy Friedman's newsletter, and there's a German equivalent that is Frühstück Director, breakfast director in German. But a brunch lord is incompetent, whereas a Frühstück director is competent. So
Interesting.
slight
Right,
difference.
okay.
I also
Okay.
feel like this has just a little bit of, I was unaware of this until going to America recently. Uh, Brunch has got a bit of a branding problem in America. Like there is a lot of hatred for brunch in America.
But brunch is wonderful.
Well, see, Daniel, that's because you've gone native here in Australia. There is a lot of American hatred for brunch. I've heard a lot of people, like famously in The Bear, right? They're like brunch, and it's a thing. Some people in America think brunch culture and brunch as a thing is just fucking terrible and awful, and they hate it.
Okay. Well, let's ask the local brunch lords. Let's go on, James. What's next?
Jarlic,
Charlie.
which is just a portmanteau for jarred garlic, which is one of those words that I heard. There's a TikTok account called Chef Reactions, which is just a guy who's a chef reacting to people doing usually really bad recipes. And he always called it jarlic. And I just kind of thought it was a joke. And then at some point I was like, oh, wait, that's actually a word. And I Googled it around and it's like there's articles on Eater and stuff like that on defending garlic, because the other thing is garlic is, it's not fresh garlic. So people are very anti garlic unless they like easy recipes, in which case they're very pro garlic. But garlic is just kind of delightful.
I like it. It's just like so good because it's so close to garlic, right? And it's got that JG thing at work as well. Like it could just be garlic in the way that it's Germany kind of.
Could have been. It could have been.
Yeah.
Gigantic jar of garlic. What Jane from space says, oh, it's Jean's garlic. Obviously, like jorts or jandals, right? I've got my gar of garlic right here. Big garlic defender. Watch out though. Yeah.
We go with the peeled cloves that come from the store. So it's somewhere between fresh garlic and garlic. They
Wow.
don't last.
Okay. And what might you
Yeah.
use garlic in your perhaps the next word you've brought us?
The next one I have is a marry me recipe, and specifically the marry me part, because there was apparently this recipe called marry me chicken, and then I would see other recipes online that were like, it's marry me beef and marry me
Okay, so it
brisket
became
and
a
marry me short ribs and
productive
marry me beans
prefix.
and marry me lentils and cookies and marry me cheesecake. And it's like, that literally cannot be some preparation or set of ingredients that sounds good with all of those things. And really, it's just a recipe that's so good that will inspire the person you serve it to propose or maybe accept your proposal.
First of all, you're not getting married with those lentils. Okay. That's not happening.
But but two vegans could get
Yeah.
together and love each other very much.
Daniel's
do
bringing
some
in that
really good-
serious Simpsons you don't make friends with salad vibe, which is odd because he's a vegetarian. I'm not sure what's going on there.
I am a vegetarian, but I have my lines in the sand.
What, you don't like to fart? Is that what it is?
No, farting is awesome. Farting during brunch is twice as good. I just want to say. So, marry me dish, the go-to meal when you're closing the deal. Very good. And one more from you, James. I want to hear this one.
Yeah, I know I know we chatted a little bit. Yapping, which is another one of those brain rot words, frankly, except that it's a really old word. And this one I liked just because I heard my son using it, talking about yapping or people yapping. And, I'm old. So my sense of yapping is that people doing that are annoying, and yapping is a bad way of talking. And it's really like it's never positive. But it was obvious at some point that yapping didn't have that connotation for him. And so I dug around, and it's like, oh, people yapping, it's like kids today use it more neutrally just to describe someone talking or monologuing or being really enthusiastic about it. And I even noticed yesterday, Jamal Bowie, the columnist on Blue Sky, was like talking about how he doesn't capitalize in his tweets. And he's like, this seems to bother quite a few people, but the answer is that I'm just yapping, and I don't feel the need to add punctuation or capitalization when it isn't necessary for meaning. So it's just, I love that it's a really old word that had a very distinct connotation that I don't even know that it was in fashion, but has it come back in a big way with a new vibe.
You noticed that one, Mignon.
Yeah, I think James and I hang out in all the same places apparently, because I saw the post from Jamal Bowie on Blue Sky too. I was going to mention it with the yapping.
It's fascinating.
That felt like a very authoritative use somehow.
Yeah.
Landmark. I feel like we're seeing amelioration happening in real time. It's very exciting. Oh my gosh. James, thank you so much for all the words that you bring, not just today, but all year round.
You are very welcome. That's me yapping.
Yeah, finger on the pulse. The fire hose has been switched off just temporarily.
I also noticed one that didn't get in, caught in 4K.
Oh yes, yeah. This is another like very big with the young folk. This is something I hear at work. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know this one. What is it?
Take a guess. You have to guess.
Like on video? Caught on video?
Video is the relevant reference, but if you're caught in 4K, there's no question but that you did that thing. You were caught red-handed. Ben, help me out.
Yeah, so the way I've certainly heard it used is my understanding is it might have come from possibly a sports lineage when someone does something maybe like not good, like in basketball, or like if someone gets dunked on or something like that, it's literally caught in 4K, so you can see in just spectacular grainy detail how a person's like undercarriage was just dangling on someone's head, kind of thing. It's to signify that there is both no question as to the thing happening, but also, for the way I've heard it used, to signify that like the significant detail in which the thing was captured is also embarrassing. Like it's like the unsubtleness. So, for instance, I pinged a kid for like trying to sneak out of the classroom, and I was like, "Oi, stop it!" And someone, but because it was like a quiet room and it was like really obvious, one of the other kids was like, "Ah, caught in 4K." And the suggestion being that that person should be more embarrassed than otherwise because it was so obvious what they had done wrong.
4K image resolution is, of course, the standard for ultra high definition. So is it that each pixel is represented with a 4K number?
No, Daniel, you absolutely. I'm surprised at you, sir.
Why
That
are you
is,
surprised?
you should be embarrassed. 4K
Always.
just means that there is nearly 4,000 pixels across the top of the standard 16:9 aspect ratio screen. So it's not actually 4,000. I think someone helped me out here. It's
40.
like, yeah, there you go.
Thanks, Lord Mortis.
Just thank you. Good on Lord Mortis.
I knew
knows.
Lord Mortis would be in on this.
That's all it means. In the same way that
Okay.
we used to say 1080, but strangely enough, 1080 comes from the side and sort of 4K comes from the top. Who knows?
It's
Awesome.
an advertising thing. It's because of
Yeah.
advertising. 4
Okay.
is bigger than 2.
It is. It is.
It's
Thank you
God,
for straightening
humans
me
are
out on
dumb,
that.
aren't we?
And now it's time for the Because Language Word of the Week of the Year. First, we're going to have some stats on the vote. There were 511 votes across 4 platforms: Bluesky, Twitter, Facebook, and Discord. Sorry, I said that wrong. Twitter. Last year, votes from Twitter were only 70% of those on Bluesky. That is to say, even last year, we got more votes on Blue Sky. But this year, Twitter votes are down to about a third of the Blue Sky votes. Now, there were some words that people liked on different platforms more. So I'm describing these as very Blue Sky words, very Twitter. Here they are. The very Blue Sky words were Exodus, that is the flight from Twitter.
Yeah, of course.
Fundy baby voice, the teeny weeny voice that sometimes women in Christian circles use to not be threatening to men. And Wank Panzer, a pointlessly overtooled vehicle, especially a Cybertruck from Tesla.
Oh, wow.
Very Twitter words, nothing really stood out. There were no very Twitter words. The very Facebook words were corn plating. Corn plating is when when fans of a fandom really, really overthink and over-explain every detail. It was named because in an Encanto group, somebody was thinking, I just noticed that Dolores is holding a plate of corn. It's like, oh man, you are seriously corn plating this.
You have dug too deep.
Nobit was a very Facebook word, an obituary mistakenly published before the person in question has died, or some kind of announcement. International Blue Screen Day, when everyone's Windows computers went down. And and then the very Discord words were che, the Argentine discourse particle. It's like, hey, or what's up, or focal marker. Listen to the next thing I say, che. And it's in the news because it only got into the Spanish dictionary, the Real Academia Española, this year. Only recently did it make it into that dictionary. And then aura. So aura, I think, really has some international legs there. Wait, that's not Spanish. Okay, now it's time for number 10. And I just love to hear your comments and also in chat. Forever chemicals. Forever chemicals are chemicals that get into our bodies, build up, and don't decompose.
I feel like I've been hearing that for years.
Yeah, and I also feel like it would have been higher given, like, that felt like it was really talked about this year in particular. But yeah, I'm just a bit surprised that it didn't land a little bit higher.
Yeah, me too. Maybe a lot of the attention was taken up by dissolving Atlantic current.
True.
Number 9 was brat.
Hey, back again.
I guess now that brat is popular and it's summer here, we can have a brat summer. Ben,
No,
Yeah.
Daniel, I'm shutting that down straight
Let's
away.
have
Daniel does not need to have a brat summer.
Let's have a brat summer.
Nope.
We can.
Get a bright green shirt.
No, Daniel, stop it. Stop. I can. Whatever
I'm
you're
coming
doing
over.
right now, whatever
I'm
you're
coming
about
over.
to say, no, don't do that. The last thing Perth needs is our pair of dad bods out there bratting it up. Not required.
With that Related or Not song played on a Bluetooth speaker in Hay Street
Jesus
Mall.
Christ.
I'm coming over.
Bad, all bad.
There's a tie for 7th.
Oh,
Weird. Tell me about weird.
It definitely had its moment. It was a big surge in weird.
remind me why we're not talking about the normal use of the word weird.
Well, we are.
No. I know, but like, obviously, we're not just meaning the word weird. There was something that happened to do with the word weird that I'm forgetting about, and that I'm hoping lots of other listeners need my help remembering.
Lord Mortis, you can tell us.
It was Tim Walls, right? Tim Walls said they're just weird little guys. And there's a podcast now, incidentally, Weird Little Guys.
Is that?
But yeah, this podcast. But it was basically used to describe J.D. Vance and a lot of people in that sort of MAGA sphere, and it sort of spread. And for a few weeks, it was like Democrats were using it, and people on that sort of lefty side were basically using it to describe a lot of the ideas on the right, with all sorts of stuff. But yeah, weird.
I think that weird is a wonderful discourse strategy because, as we've seen on Bluesky, dismissal is better than engagement. Just label it weird and get it. And especially because, as we talked about with Dr. Nicole Holliday, here are people who don't like being marginalized. If in fascism, there's an in-group and an out-group. The in-group, they're the ones who matter. And the out-group doesn't matter. Their votes, their rights, all those things don't matter. And who the out-group is depends on the conversation. But here are some people who are proclaiming themselves the in-group. And then by labeling them weird, you say, you're out-group. And that's very upsetting because they don't want to be weird. They want to be normal. Their brand is normal.
There's a few people in chat talking about the fact that it was a little bit of a flash in the pan and then it went away. And there's some postulating in our chat box about how like maybe that could have helped and that sort of thing. I too remember that happening, and I remember what, in retrospect, what ended up being the false hope that it gave me that things were changing and that the tide was turning and there was some real momentum behind not Trump. But unfortunately, I personally, I love Lord Mortis so very much, but I'm going to disagree with him a little bit. I think they could have kept on the weird bandwagon the whole way along. I agree. I think that campaign got some very bad advice, and that was one of the things that they messed up on, was not continuing to just highlight the weirdness of what is going on. Because it was the one way of maybe getting cut through, but now I'm getting political. So
how many different think pieces were there of stop calling conservatives weird? Here's why that's bad for Democrats. Because it's always here's why that's bad for Democrats.
I'm just, my little piece would be they could have flogged that horse until it was dead 3 times over, and I don't think it would have actually made a difference. Unfortunately, I think what we saw was there's a whole bunch of Americans who were like, I want that guy.
That guy.
Yeah,
big time.
Unfortunately.
Thank you, Lord Mortis. Bloop. And number 7, also serving cunt, or I'm going to also include cunty. This is by no means a new one. This is not new at all. This has been from drag culture since at least 2011. It was new to me, and the use of cunty was so arresting and memorable that I decided to include it. And here we are at number 7. Any feels?
Well, I think being American, it is way more offensive to me than it is to people in Europe. So I was kind of shocked to see it on the list.
We've spoken about this quite a few times about how playful and desensitized this word tends to be in Australia. I think, Daniel, the combination of your American lineage and your Exmo lineage means this one probably for you still hits pretty hard, even though you know and you're like, it's not that big a deal. Like, I suspect that there's still a part of you that when you heard it, you were like, that little like electric shock that happens. Because yeah, as I was riding through America, I forgot sometimes. I lapsed, and there really is just like a I struggle to think of a more taboo word than that word, other than the N word and other racial, like really horrendous racial. That's probably yeah. It's real bad. In America, it's real bad.
Mignon?
Yeah, real bad.
Yeah,
Can confirm.
that's all we got. There are a couple of things to say about it from an Australian perspective, and not just Australian English. I mean, it's just a synonym for dude. And before he died, I got the chance to have an interview with Scott Hutchison of Frightened Rabbit. And he was a lovely guy. And we talked about the word. And he said, you can be a lovely cunt, you can be a sick cunt, or whatever. And it's for him, it was just dude. But I've also taught classes on swearing. And while we were happy to throw around, fucking shit and stuff like that, the largely older attendees of my classes just could not get to that one. They could not get to the C word. It was the C word for the duration of the swearing class. So to have it
That's
pop
so
up like
funny,
this,
isn't it?
boom, it does. It still has the power to offend. Okay, let's see. Number 6. We're getting number 6. Wankpanzer, the Wankpanzer, a pointlessly large and overpowered 4x4 vehicle, in particular a Tesla Cybertruck.
That's super fun. Well, is Panzer, does that in other combinations or words?
I haven't seen Panzer used as a combining form.
I'm pretty sure it's because there's German Panzer tanks, German Tiger
Yes.
tanks.
And
Precisely.
so all of those tanks will have different prefixes, right? So there's like Jagdpanzers, and there's that's the only one I know off the top of my head, but I know there's quite a few.
And then it's always nice to see wanky used in context. So
Mhm.
very good. Let's see. We have a 4-way tie for second. It was absolutely locked tight. So here they are in no particular order. Raw dogging. I was hoping that would be number 1. Number 1.
God.
Taking a flight without indulging in entertainment or distraction, originally having sex without a condom, but it's in expanded use, I think, engaging in an activity without using customary precaution. Like I didn't wear a mask, I was just raw dogging the air.
This got applied to me the other day. Not the sexual.
What were you raw dogging?
I can't. I was at work, and one of my I think I was I was writing some commentary or something like that, and I wasn't using AI, and one of my colleagues sort of jokingly kind of went, "Whoa, raw dogging the comments, mate. Whoa, that's brutal." I was just like, is that where we're at? Where if I just write a thing, it's considered raw dogging words? I don't know.
Oh my God, that's wild.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another good example of something taboo becoming being used in a not taboo context, although I think it's for laughs, right? I mean,
Yeah, certainly. This was definitely designed to elicit a chuckle, for sure.
definitely. All right. Also at second place, demure, which we have talked about, so I won't go on about that one. Another one, third spaces, kind of a surprise for me. Ben, you like this one?
Oh, you will not stop me talking about third spaces, Daniel. You're going to try, and I won't let you know. I won't bang on about it here, because I'm sure all of the people currently sitting in this room and all of the people who will be listening to this show later have had enough of Ben talking about third spaces. So just a very, very quick summation. There is home, space number 1. There is work, space number 2. And then in a healthy, flourishing, community-oriented society that most of us would like to live in, there should be a whole bunch of third spaces. In Australia, probably the single greatest example I can think of like this would be the beach, a place where lots of different people from lots of different spaces and places can come and share that space, use it for multiple different activities, blah, 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 blah. But one of the problems with contemporary society, especially in places like Canada, America, and Australia, like very suburban places, is there is a severe lack of third spaces in most people's, at least local environment. And we live a fairly disconnected and not particularly community oriented life because of this lack of third spaces. And I'm done.
Amen.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I mean, it always makes me think of coffee shops in Vienna. You know how the artists and writers would hang out in coffee shops. Although I think wasn't that because their apartments were so like tiny and cold?
The New
Maybe.
York effect, yeah.
I went to an event by a couple of friends I know who were they just set up a community event with games and stuff and invited me, and it was really lovely. And I just, I just got so much respect for people who are able to, or who have the desire to build community in real life. And I found that in the moment, like I had a really good time. I also found that it was hard for me to get back into doing people mode because online people are easy. You can leave them on red. And I really just enjoyed getting together with real people in a real place. So my admiration for those friends of mine is off the charts. Okay, our last second place one, which I think also could have been number one, AI slop.
Oh yeah.
Or just slop. Slop or AI slop. Low quality content made by generative AI technology. What are your feels on this one? Mignon, you want to go?
A source of enshittification, for sure.
Very much. Very much.
Yeah. It's nice to have a word for it.
Slop. There it is. Like you go to Facebook. I go to Facebook and my feed is just about entirely content for eyeballs slop.
Oh, it's ugly out there.
It's a bit of a problem.
It felt a little forced at me at first. Like they were saying, like, well, there's spam and then there's slop, and it felt like it was like kind of trying to make fetch happen. But then it did because it really is so useful.
It is. It's a bit of a problem, though, because it's feeding back into the training data at the worst possible time before we're good at detecting it. So now it's unfortunately going to be ensconced in our lives and enshittifying our information pipeline that we use to make decisions and do that stuff. So what a moment.
James in chat made a comment that I also wanted to make, which was sometimes it can be really hard to differentiate what is true AI slop and what is just awful cottage industry like base meme generation, all that sort of stuff. Like it's basically it's the same thing that we've been struggling with at like a university level or like a high school level, which is like, how do we tell if it's made by a person or not? Except at the opposite end of the like quality spectrum. So like, how do we tell if this absolute garbage was made by AI or just people trying to generate clicks?
Very much. Is it time? I think it might be time.
Okay,
time
here we go.
For our Because Language 2024 word of the week of the year. Sane washing. Sane washing.
Wow.
I have feels about this.
Unexpected. I did not. I color me surprised.
Said of the media when it makes bizarre or dislocated public pronouncements seem normal and coherent.
I put out a call on my social media for like, what do you think the word of the year is? And a lot of people said sane washing.
Wow. Okay. I feel like a lot of us are feeling frustrated by, there's this thing called normalcy bias, where you see something really weird, but because it's hard to tell weird stuff from normal stuff, and because normal stuff is just so much more common and normal, we mislabel everything as normal, even when it's really, really weird. But I think a lot of us are getting frustrated by normalcy bias on the part of traditional gatekeepers who translate bizarre, disjointed rantings by, say, politicians into normal seeming prose. So there's a frustration there.
It's, like this seems like much like AI slop. This seems like a thing that is definitely filling a void we require, right? Like there is we need a word for this thing that we can kind of feel and sense and intuit happening around us. So for that reason, I think it's a very appropriate sort of, it certainly belongs in the list of like top 3 or 4. I haven't come across it though all that much, I will say. As in, like, I heard it and I heard about it, but like by this logic, vibe for me I would have come across way more.
Yeah, maybe.
If you follow US politics online, you hear sane washing a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I expect that we'll probably see this one in the American Dialect Society Word of the Year coming up. I said at the time, I'm not crazy about it because I'm really trying to avoid ableist language like crazy and insane. I am pleased to see the washing combining form. That was pretty cool. Hedvig at the time pointed out that maybe these words like insane and crazy have kind of reached a point where they no longer apply to the original thing, and now they have become their own thing. Like, this chocolate pudding you made is insane. You know,
what's the word for that? The treadmill?
Amelioration. Oh, we're talking about the euphemism. Sorry, the
Is it
euphemism
reaching?
cycle. There's a euphemism cycle, and I'll stick in the comments the linguist who came up with it many years before a certain white-haired cognitive scientist.
So this is the idea, right? That once upon a time, the word dolt was a genuinely polite attempt to describe a person with intellectual disabilities, but then it became an insult. So then they moved on to something like moron. That became an insult. They moved on to something like idiot. That became then we get to, I'm going to use the R word now. And to some degree, still in literature is like sort of official designation for a person with intellectual disabilities. But because we keep using them as an insult, we have to move on to the next thing. And it sort of sounds like Hedvig was suggesting that that's kind of maybe what's happening to like crazy and that sort of stuff, right? Like we're moving past it. I don't know though. I do sort of, given how prevalently a concept like sane and sanity is still used as genuine like medical diagnostic criteria, I don't know if we're there yet.
No, I don't think so either. And even if we were, it's kind of weird to me. Like, oh, well, if there's an offensive term, just keep using it until it's okay.
That's not how that works.
Oh dear.
Or at least not often.
I was hoping that Hope Core would do better.
Oh yeah.
Wouldn't that have been nice? But
Yeah.
we've been focusing, especially in our last episode with Dr. Gerald Roach, about how hope needs to be cultivated. We need to cultivate the quiet courage of the everyday. But unfortunately, it's in short supply. Joy was canceled this year. That didn't happen. So that was something that I really liked, and I feel like it didn't make it. But sane washing, the Because language word of the week of the year. Thanks to everybody who voted. Any final thoughts?
A good year. Good year for words. A lot of cool stuff
out there. Bit of an off year.
Yeah. A lot of fun. There were years, in the past, I think last year was really AI heavy, and a few years before that was really pandemic heavy. This year feels a little more like of a mix, which is fun.
There was several terrible things happening this year, so we've got quite a few options to choose from.
True.
Well, I would just like to give a special thanks to Mignon Fogarty. Mignon, how can people find you?
Just listen to the Grammar Girl podcast. That's the best place to find me.
Very good.
Do people even listen to that show, Mignon? That's a callback. If Daniel leaves that in the show, I'm not just being a prick, I swear.
Listen, you have to listen to the whole thing in context.
Yeah.
And thanks to our wonderful audience, listeners, and friends. Thanks to everybody who gave suggestions this year, and to all of our guests for the year. Thanks to all the speech dorks at Speech Docs.
No, don't.
I'm surprised that it actually took me this long to come up with that. They transcribed all the words so that everybody can read our show as well as listen to our show and watch our show. Maybe you can do all three at the same time. And of course, big thanks to our patrons who keep the show going. All right, Ben.
I'm pointing at all of the different patrons in our window. I'm like,
and you.
Now, if you do like our show, there are a few things that you can do that would help us out. You can follow us on all of the various places. We are Because Lang Pod in all of the bits and pieces. But Daniel is really enjoying Blue Sky, so you should check us out there.
This isn't about me.
It kind of is, though, Daniel, if we're being honest, because most of the time when we talk to listeners, they're like, I love that Daniel Midgley guy. He's so great. So go and talk to Daniel on Blue Sky. If you want to chat to us, as in like literally have us hear your voice, please leave us a speak pipe message. You can find that link on our website, or you can email us. Classic, old school, very demure, very nice. hello@becauselanguage.com. Or the very funnest of all of the ways is just tell a mate about our podcast and be like, you should check these speech dorks out.
You can also become a patron. Patrons help us by making sure that we have a little bit of money to compensate our guests, to pay the bills, to keep the website going, and to do fun stuff that we really like to do. Depending on your level, you get live episodes like this one, bonus episodes, mail-outs, shout-outs, and access to our Discord community. I would just like to give a special shout-out to our patrons at the supporter level. You know, I've been mixing it up a little bit, not just reading alphabetically like I always used to. Been doing it new. So this time, we are ordering our supporters by how uncommon the letters in your name are. What's the most common letter in English?
E? A?
Yes, it's E.
Okay.
So if your name were all E's, you'd have the highest score, and if your name were all Z's, you would come last. If we were doing this in English,
right?
But we're not.
Oh Jesus!
We're using letter frequency stats for Finnish. That's right. The most Finnishly probable names. As always, divided by the number of letters, because a long name would get, of course, a higher score. All right, the most Finnishly likely name on our list was Stan. Lots and lots of normal Finnish letters. Most common letter A, surprisingly. Then, Kate, Elias, Matt, Nasrin, Joanna, Steele, Nikolai, I am here at this point, Alyssa, Kevin, Keith, Aria Flame, Rianne, Laura, who just upgraded from listener to supporter. Thanks, Laura. Manu, Renee, Aisha, Luis, Helen, Nigel. Now we're getting into some Finnishly improbable names. Amir, Ignacio, Pharaoh Cat, Tony, Lissa, Mignon. You are here at this point. Colleen, Kathy, Whitney, Aldo, and Ben. You're here. It's the B.
Oh,
it's
wow.
the B. It's dragging you down, man. Linguistic chaos. Basically, any W's, F, B, G, or C. Those are the least common letters in Finnish. So, Felicity, Andy, Tim, Angry Balls, Margaret, Christopher, Grammarian, Amy, Sonic Hedgehog, Lord Mortis, Diego, Rachel, Meredith, Termy, Sam, Tig, Kenny Archer, Jack, Larry, Andy from Logophilius, lots of uncommon letters there. Molly D, Hedvig, the G and the D were dragging her down. That's just for reference. Chris L, John Troy, Roger, Chris W, and last of all, Wolf Dog with a W, F, and G. And our latest patrons at the listener level, John K and John M, and our new free patrons, Sonia, Cameron, and Dawn. Mignon, I'm sticking in chat your last bit. I want you to give this a try.
What? Okay.
You get the honor of reading the very last bit.
Oh my gosh, that's a hard name. Okay. Our theme music was written and performed by Drew Kraplajanov. Drew was performed by Drew Cap.
Daniel, you're a mean man.
Our theme music was written and performed by Drew Kraplajanov, who also performs with Ryan Binu and Didion's Bible. Thanks for listening. We will catch you next time, because language.
Wow, you're a pro.
That was
Mignon,
really impressive.
You're the OG. You're the OG Linkcomer. You know this, don't you?
But I can't read names. It's almost as bad as Irish when I've got a show, I've got a script. Suddenly there's an Irish word and I break
Oh
out
yeah, it's
into a
all
cold
over. Yeah, like a
sweat,
full up sweat.
Yeah. Anyway,
Someone in
thank
chat
you.
makes here's another like inside baseball moment for people listening later. Someone in the chat has acknowledged that in our little script that Daniel copy pasted into chat for Mignon, he has put the IPA pronunciation help for Ryan Bino, but he hasn't put it in for Drew Kraplianov, which is just awful. Why, Daniel? Why?
I thought it would be obvious.
I guess it is in retrospect.
Monster.
I don't have my
Monster.
glasses on either. It's tiny.
To keep everyone just sort of like entertained while we wait, I would like to share a fact, and this is the like least cool way to do this because I'm sharing a Hank Green fact that I just saw, which is basically like I would say it's 3/4 of the people in this room right now probably already know this, but it blew my mind so hard. So someone basically asked about petrichor, which, if anyone is unfamiliar, is that smell that comes after rain or like during rain, especially rain that happens like into dry soil. And they studied it. It's a relatively recent word. I didn't realize that. I figured it would be one of those things that like some Renaissance man came up with, but it's not. It's from like the 60s apparently. And they realized, or when they studied it, they found out that petrichor is sort of created by this thing that's in the soil. And when the water hits the soil, it gets thrown up into the air or like aerosolized with water droplets, and then the water droplets pop and we can smell it. But here's the interesting thing.
That was pretty interesting.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. This is the preamble, mate. Wait until we get to the body text. Check this out. We can smell this substance, which I think is called like geosim. We can smell this substance better than any other thing basically in the world. We can detect geosim in the order of 5 parts per trillion. We normally smell things at parts per million or parts per billion. Parts per trillion is like dog level smell ability. And we have this ability to smell this thing to that degree. And no one really knows why. They've postulated that it might be because it helps us find water, maybe. Like at some point in our evolutionary history, that smell signified some kind of a water source, maybe. But yeah, I was listening to this fact and then I turned to my partner just because I suspected that was pretty wild. And then I was like, hey, because she's a doctor. If someone can smell something in like parts per trillion, that's crazy, right? And she's like, we can't do that. I was like, well, Hank Green says so. And she's like, whoa, that's wild. So the doctor says it's crazy. That's how you know it's crazy.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And why would we be so good at that? I guess finding water. I don't even think that we smell smoke at that level of sensitivity.
No, not even remotely close, I don't think.
And smelling smoke is really, really useful. It's a
you
really good
so.
thing to be able to do.
Right, and petrichor is only when it rains, so it wouldn't find water, after a month of no rain, wouldn't help you find water in a drought.
The only thing I can imagine is maybe you can also detect a faint petrichor odor at like creeks or other like bubbling, waterfally, cascadey. I'm not sure, but yeah. And yeah, the main point is we don't actually know. We haven't got a good answer for why we can smell it to that degree.
Well, that's just bonkers. Thank you, Ben.
I've done my duty. So I can go? Like, we're done here?
No.